Where are you based, by the way? I never asked.
I'm living in the Bay Area, Palo Alto, actually. But you hear it. I'm from Europe. I'm German, um, and joined Congregate 2017 when MTG Modern Times Group acquired Congregate from GameStop. I came from InnoGames and had a bit of a past in the gaming space, working for larger German media groups, building up a lot around gaming. But my background is rather finance than really product related. I always felt it very interesting how KPIs work together, how you can measure things, how you can really use them to measure engagement and bring them to the next level. So the deeper I got in, the more curious I was around understanding product and opportunity in the space. And yeah, we had a couple of changes in management within Congregate, and I think since 2, maybe 3 years, I'm the CEO.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you a question, and then we'll get into like. First of all, you have an insane background, and Modern Times Group has had some pretty good exits thus far. I mean, we saw with the ESL, which I believe it
Oh
came with.
yeah.
I forget I'm forgetting the tournament platform, but it's huge. They already have a deal with Gucci. But Mountain Times Group has had quite a bit of exits recently. I'm curious about their future strategy, but they're a massive group. And now the big group in Europe is Embracer, and Embracer is just buying everyone up.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't think
right.
I don't think they're done buying everyone up. They I think they're the new Ubisoft. It's sort of like where it's headed.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jonah. I mean, you have Stillfront, you have Embracer, and you have MTG, and I think the market still tries to understand a little bit what's the strategy behind kind of buying everything up and adding more to the pie. You see currently that advertising related models, and I still would count games very close to that because we buy our users and also have our advertising revenue on the other side, are kind of beaten down with everything that was associated with Apple's privacy changes. And that, I think, still gives each, let's say, gaming stock, partly even tech stock, a very hard stand in the market. So it's very important to really outline a strategy to kind of still stay curious, do a couple of things like incubation, new stuff like what we do with blockchain, but still have a solid foot in the door in the good old traditional gaming. And I think this is a bit the strategy of MTG, allowing to learn about the new things and the stuff we are doing. This is not something that will be out in the market and accepted in Q4 or even now. It's rather
Oh no, we're
I would
talking
say
3 to 5 years. 3 to 5,
exactly
like
three to
for
five
your R&D.
years.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
need to
Yeah,
ask you
exactly.
because you. So I interview a lot of amazing people, but most don't have a finance or investments or the 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 picks and shovels background. A lot of the CEOs are former developers or gritty entrepreneurs, but you have a really storied CFO background, and so
Yeah.
obviously you're constantly looking at the markets. Um, what do you think about Unity's acquisition of Iron Source? Now, from what I understand, it's not a cash purchase. It's a stock purchase. So it's just a
Yeah.
transfer of stock. So I think the market didn't understand what the acquisition value actually was.
Yeah.
Because I've done some research on the Iron Source purchase, which is a huge advertising purchase outside of their Weta purchase. Do you think this is a positive or a potential negative for Unity in the long run?
Um, well, it's a good question. It's not easy to answer, Jonah, to be honest. I think the what Unity did was partly understandable with regards to kind of securing logistics opportunities as the whole market is in a consolidation, especially within the ad space. And I think looking to diversify your business has always been a great strategy, especially when you are not wanting to get too dependent on certain, um, let's say, acquisition tools for users, opportunities to in-source margins, kind of owning the whole way of the runway, right? So I think from that perspective, it certainly made a lot of sense. The market, though, has become very tough, especially for advertisers. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity, but we are still, looking for the right valve for, let's say, the mix to get user acquisition into the right spot again. And I think
Oh yeah,
from
I'm
my
gonna save
yeah
that part because I'm gonna talk to you about user
yeah
acquisition in guilds because I think that's a really I think so a lot of people think that Web3 gaming just like so I've had debates with people on Spaces, on in person, and on email through various forums about like how Web3 gaming isn't real, it isn't this, it isn't that, and I've always said to, and this is where a lot of Web2 developers sort of like had this epiphany, and I've said, you don't get it. Web3 gaming isn't like this imaginary thing where it just exists because there's money out there. Investors are gaming investors. Not all of them are that brilliant, but a lot of them understand business. And the reason Web3 gaming has gotten several $billion of capital flown into it is because Apple has practically killed a lot of the user acquisition strategy
yeah
on mobile, right? So all that mobile investment money, which would go to mobile Web2 gaming, is now going to mobile Web3. And now you see, of course, you have great, companies such as yourselves. You have Tilting Point. You have all these big mobile developers coming into the space because they need to find alternative user acquisition strategies. And then you see guilds like YGG and the other DAOs that are around. They're raising a ton of money, and it's not because they're making a lot of money today, but they have some alternative solution to user acquisition where you're not paying advertising dollars or paying for programmable advertising, but you're saying, hey, here's a discount on inventory at the start of the game. Maybe you get some value during the game, and you're going to bring your audience to us in the same way that you do, YouTube or Twitch content creator advertising. So, um, I'll get to that, but I need to do the thing that my lawyers told me to do, which is like the intro and disclaimer. so,
yeah that's important.
this is the RE3W gaming spaces. My name is Jonah Blake. Before we get into the nitty gritty and talk with CFO and CEO Genius Marcus Lip here, this room is not financial or legal advice. Anything I say or Marcus says can be used in the court of stupidity if you follow it, and run that at your own risk. This is not an advertisement. This is not an advertising space. If I was paid by geez, I'm having a tongue twister. Kongregate, I would list a hashtag as the I do not like or care for the FTC to come after me. And with that being said, we have CEO and CFO of Kongregate, Marcus Lip, who has a pretty storied background, which we just heard. So Marcus, now I'm going to go to the user acquisition question, and we'll get to what you're doing at Kongregate. I like to do these spaces where we're talking about the general industry and general movements that we're seeing. Do you see alternative paths to guilds or other methods of user acquisition? I mean, that's the name of the game outside of the developer side is user acquisition. Where are you seeing emerging tactics?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question, Jonah. I see, and that as associates a little bit with your question with regards to Unity and Iron Source. I rather see that moving away from the traditional places, more into social media. Everything you see currently around blockchain, what means Discord, Twitter, where you really, organize groups, guilds, and common interest people with regards to new ideas, new opportunities, and spreading the word through social media with partly agencies you can use for that or own in-house UA people. I think this is the new way of doing marketing in a couple of years from now. It already has started, certainly, with blockchain, but the regular UA stuff doesn't really work yet there very well. So you have to work with community-backed professionals, so to speak, if you want to build your Discord in the right way. And I think this is really moving into that space. We see how our kids are behaving. I have 4 kids. They are on TikTok, Snapchat, and whatsoever. So this is the way to get them. This is the way to really address them. You don't buy these people for 30, 40 bucks on Facebook. That was old guys like me. But this is the future is in social media for sure.
Well, let me ask you this because even though you're not paying 30 or 40 bucks per player, right, for advertising and distribution on like a Facebook or whatever, uh, you are paying a user acquisition cost if you're doing it through TikTok, right? Because
Yeah,
that's now the big space, right? All these new creators who are pretty much dominating YouTube on the gaming side now. Slowly, they're not there yet, but TikTok gaming is the fastest growing market for user acquisition by
yeah,
far right now, outside of Twitch. And then you have rate cards that you pay for Twitch to get your game played by, the shrouds of the world. Um, since you're in this space, do you have a insight onto those user acquisition costs? Do you find them to be potentially cheaper or more expensive, or something alternative in terms of how you're evaluating that user acquisition?
yeah. I would say they are probably, let's say this market is kind of partly emerging from the side. TikTok, there has always been a certain opportunity for sure. And it's probably just a different source, in my opinion, with regards to alternative to Facebook or whatsoever. So the costs might seem to be pretty similar, but you go deeper into social media and you probably go deeper into, using crypto influencers or even influencers. It's a complete new path that we are seeing arising from the market with regards to opportunities. And this might end up in similar acquisition costs. I don't see the costs really going away or becoming cheaper, potentially even more expensive. The higher the demand is, the usually higher the costs around it are. So market economics work in each world. It doesn't really matter where you go, but I think the path that we are looking is different and partly new. So I'm certainly interested in the new stuff, and I would probably have bought something that is more towards this rather than the traditional um, old way of doing UA, so to speak.
That makes sense. And well, I think it's interesting. Well, let's separate from Twitch or TikTok because it's funny. You're not paying directly to like a Facebook or whatever, right? You're not paying their fee, but you're actually paying through agencies that represent them, and that's a whole other
Exactly.
thing about how agencies are now have grown increasingly even more important than what they used to be because they're the middle person to the creator, and you're not only paying the rate card, but you're paying a rate card with a premium for that management.
Yeah.
So it could be more expensive, but I also wonder if you get, the saying is you get what you pay for. There may be higher user acquisition costs on TikTok and Twitch, but you're getting much better users who are potentially higher paying because they're committed to an influencer and will pay for things based on what the influencer pays for. So let let's skip that part because I think that's like a Web 2 thing that we can talk about all day and it's super interesting. But we try and be more Web 3 gaming. Uh, I do want to go into user acquisition costs on Web 3, and then we're going to go into a segue into where I see your user acquisition costs, and I'd like to get your take on it. So, in terms of guilds or in terms of Twitter marketing, where are you targeting user acquisition? Not the cost, but where are you seeing the most potential to get users to your new games and your new experiences?
Yeah, so we target basically in Twitter and Discord primarily, using our in-house resources because I think it's very important to build that muscle internally, right? If you really want to grow, you certainly can start with strong partners. That's why we also chose Immutable. They really help us to get ready to understand the market better. And for us, Discord, we have started that even back then in the good old Web 2 days, but it had become a lame muscle. So we really needed to get into it to kind of re-strengthen it again, understand a bit more how the, let's say, Web 3 gamer thinks, works, what he's looking for, and trying to have a clear communication around what we are offering, what we are reaching out for. We also work with agencies trying to understand a bit more, trying to really learn and basically in-house all these resources. So it's a very important part for user generation. And as I said earlier, might really be the way where this whole user acquisition ship is moving.
Yeah. So we'll get to your fund in a second because I feel like that's a big UA cost and potential revenue for you. But you said something about Discord as your user acquisition target that I find interesting. And we have a Discord, right? You know, we have over 400 members now, and we have all these people. So for me, it's interesting to think about how you think about UA targeting. So when you're going to look for players across Discords, it's not like you can't go to Discord and say, "Hey, we're looking for this type of player, these types of servers," and then you pay the fee to Discord like you would Facebook, and boom, you found your target. You're manually going one by one to find the right Discord, so then either pitch or place value. When you're doing that, what's the process like? And then once you find a Discord server that you think has brand affiliation, how are you presenting the product?
So, as I said, we were really new to this space. So I think Immutable helped us a lot in sorting, especially these early stages, trying to understand the product, the direction we would like to go, and guiding us and helping us a bit to set everything up. We are working very close with them, also with agencies to try to match a little bit the profile. If you think of Blood Vessels, which is a tabletop RPG, there are certain elements, narrative components that you need to like, right? So we try to analyze this with regards to what potential Discord user mix could be a great fit. How can we structure elements of winning something or get some IMX if you participate in certain components or gameplays whatsoever. This is a bit the starting point to really iterate. We also have a very engaging Discord within Surviv.io and Bitverse, which was quite a good starting point for us to already have the guys in there. So we really have to differentiate between existing games that kind of move into a next level and completely new setup games, which is always a bit, we started from zero to actually build that Discord. And it was quite an interesting journey, and it's not yet over. We really want to make sure we are not, just kind of, it's not a hard thing to get 30, 50,000 people, but you need the right people. So we really take time and try to engage with everyone to set this up.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I, by the way, I see some hands in the audience. We will bring people up near the end. I'm just going to go through a series of questions that I've been waiting to ask Marcus because
Sure.
I think this is a really interesting topic that I don't want to lose. Especially, there aren't really any spaces on Twitter on Web3 gaming specifically that go into UA cost and sort of the finance side, where that's half the battle for most games. I think people get into this daydream of developing the next Skyrim or the next GTA, and they have no idea on the financials regarding it whatsoever. Which I do,
Yeah.
and Marcus certainly does, since he literally does this for a daily living. So taking like a segue from UA cost. Um, you have started a new fund with Immutable as a joint partner. How are you viewing that fund? I'll tell you from the outside perspective, as I think there are different ways to perception is an interesting thing to think about, especially in
Oh, yeah.
marketing. It's how I perceive it, how you perceive it, and how different types of players perceive it, like based on player archetype. And we already know EA's filed a patent on player archetypes, which is a whole other thing for
Yeah.
UA costs. But in terms of perception with the fund, I perceive it as a great user acquisition strategy, right? Because you're not only trying to acquire players and acquire interest, but you're acquiring developers and acquiring builders. I think players see this as uh, just a great way to offer new games. How are you seeing the development of your fund? And obviously, would love for you to, because I know the size, but I would like you to talk about it. The size of your fund, the type of checks you're deploying, the strategy, the thesis, where you want to go with this joint immutable, congregate fund.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And probably telling you a little bit from where we came, actually, I mean, you probably know that, but with regards to Web2, the Kongregate platform has always been huge and is famous for allowing independent developers to actually upload their games, the good Flash world, everything around it, that made us big back then in the days around 2008, 2010, when free-to-play came up. So this is how Kongregate really became popular and famous. We have gathered more than 40,000 developers with more than 140,000 games on the site itself. Nevertheless, with Flash kind of dying and even, trying to identify potential unicorns in the market in the mobile web, or let's say web 2 space, had become more and more challenging. We even saw that when MTG was stepping in 2017. So kind of moving into a first party development studio solution was always on the list, right? We did a couple of games ourselves and had actually proven that we can do it with Animation Throwdown, a game that had more than 100 million lifetime revenue achieved last year in Q3. So quite a huge beast. Nevertheless, the whole platform Web 2 thing became pretty difficult for us, especially when you think of, developers joining, trying to ask for support. Some even didn't have finished games. Then you come in, you talk about co-financing things, and then it usually gets a bit uglier, especially from a financial perspective, because not every game is a hit, and then you have a write-off, and then you invest again, and then the game is also not a hit. So it can become financially very intense for you as a company as you kind of bet on the success of these projects. With blockchain, which we tested 2019 with regards to the tech readiness for us as a company, we have actually a new opportunity to enrich and extend this experience into a new level, kind of still allowing people to play their beloved free-to-play game, but allowing them to extend the experience with a blockchain NFT component, right? So there are still, I always wanted it to fit both ways. We don't want to drag people out of their comfort zone. It's rather a process of education, and it's an offer. You don't have to do it. You still can play the Bitverse without purchasing an NFT and have a lot of fun, right? So this was the setup, but we always knew that if you want to do it right, you actually need a strong partner, because the market is very fast and very emerging with regards to, let's say, financing and the given opportunity that is simply around, right? So we were looking for a partner that is actually helping us to understand the space a bit better, to go deeper into it, to partner with us, to also help us in building the social community aspect that we talked earlier about, but also attracting developers, kind of finding a reason for them to come to us and giving them a reason to, let's say, dare the move into the Web3 landscape. We are all architects here, which means we are kind of, trying to set a couple of incentives to grow and to learn. So we cut a deal with Immutable to work together. We created a $40 million developer fund, which is basically in the understanding that you as a developer can pitch your project to our business development team. There is a bd@kongregate.com address where you can actually ask about what's this fund about, how does it work, how do I queue in my project, and everything around it. In the meantime, we are finalizing a, let's say, relaunch of the Kongregate.com platform, which will take place early Q4 this year, with a certain readiness of, still seeing your Web 2 stuff, but the main focus will be Web 3 oriented. And developers will have the opportunity to queue in their project, to tank something of that fund, and to, let's say, learn and understand how to move forward in the space without really losing anything from their free-to-play opportunity. So that was the key idea, using our network paired with a certain power of an already bigger beast in the market, Immutable, to pair forces and move ahead, right? We chose them also with regards to their L2 architecture, let's say eco-friendliness and the ESG components around it. We are certainly heavily interested in that as well, but they were the greatest fit for us, and I'm pretty happy that we did that move.
No, first off, I love Immutable. I've talked to a number of people at Immutable, and they're good people, and they're doing some cool stuff. So I think it's a great partnership. In terms of
Yeah,
your fund, just to be clear, because you never know, there may be developers listening to this who might want to submit.
of course.
Is this finance? You mentioned finance, and maybe because I work in a similar space that you do, financing means something very differently than investment. So, is this like investment, like venture investment, or does this relate to more financing, like factor banking or anything like that?
Yeah, it's basically, you mean with regards to the 40 million grant
Right.
pool?
Okay. So it's a
Yeah,
grant. So it's a developer grant.
it's a developer grant
Oh,
pool
amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
that is symbolized in IMX tokens, so to speak, right? And we will kind of, we are the negotiating partner to set everything up with the developer, trying to understand, his or the developer's projects should probably be ready to take on into a Web3 phase. There might also be developers who haven't really started a game yet. There we would technically look into it, try to understand, is there a potential fit with doing an NFT drop first to kind of raise money next to the grant to allow the developer to finance the game. Not every project is a fit for that, right? I think the days where you really kind of drop an NFT and don't really bother about when the game is ready, these days are over. You need to have a strong storyline, and this is
Yeah, I
what
agree. I
we
agree with that.
as a
We even
partner measure. Yeah.
we even see that with Web2 games.
Exactly.
The pre-orders. People get really skeptical about pre-orders. Although,
Yeah.
a lot of people obviously for God of War that sold out, but it's God of War. Those are special cases. But I agree with you. I think well, it's interesting. I've seen with something like Midnight Society, which again is sort of still a special case, where it's no longer NFTs with the hope of utility. It's that if you sell NFTs, then it means that they're involved in the QA and the general testing process, and they get some sort of say in the development process, which is a whole other thing that some Web2 developers just will not accept, which is fine, which I think makes Web3 gaming just a separate genre altogether over time. But I would agree with that. And so when let's say a game dev who has a decent game, what are their qualifications to be a part of your fund? Is it because Congregate's been around for a long time, so it's a well known site for people that played online, web based games. Does it have to be a web GL, Unity web GL, or just Unity based game, or could your platform work as a client where you can download the game that may be higher quality direct to your tech, or how are you thinking about the types of games and how it plays into your ecosystem that's already available?
Yeah. So, what we also try to, let's say, focus and aim in the long run within the platform that we are building is the opportunity to kind of interact in between games with some of the NFTs based on the fact that we might be able to create a, let's call it, common standard around it, right? So you could technically take a Bit Heroes avatar into a completely different game that, let's say, fits the opportunity to do so. So that being said, I think we will always measure kind of ready to market projects with regards to, do you have an existing, let's say, track record in the Web2 space, or is there a game already available that we can kind of review with regards to what could a Web3 opportunity be? Because when we created Bitverse and also Blood Vessels, there's a lot of stuff to do with regards to telling players what you actually want, where you want, let's say, tokens to interact with the game, right? It's a balancing question as well. So it's not just I'm coming around and here's the game and do whatever you want and throw it into the blockchain. That's not the point. We also have to understand the story behind the fit into Web3. And as I said, probably there is not even a game. Let's take a look and a path into the let's say timeline of when a game is ready, and could that be a game changer that we are willing to take on. Not every project is suitable for Web3. That is honestly the problem. It's sometimes you have to make some suggestions, but we are here to consult and to take a look together with the developer.
And now I'm gonna rubber band back to or what famous comedians call, which I'll never be, is called a or callback or reference callback, is user acquisition. So and I for full disclosure, because this is recording, I also operate a game fund. We do investments in gaming tech, and so I may know more things than I'll publicly state here, just because it would be too confusing. So regarding the fun side of what you're doing, and then I'm going to get to Bitverse and blood vessels, because I have
Hmm.
a method to my madness, because it all comes together in one neat package. But user acquisition is the big theme I wanted for this space, because it user acquisition is the most important part of getting the game really to market outside of distribution. Of course, Congregate is already a platform that you're doing some repurposing to, which is interesting. That's alpha. I did not know that. Which should be interesting. How many wallets, and I say wallets because Web3 understands the term wallets instead of accounts, but it's the same thing. How many existing accounts currently exist in the Congregate database or the Congregate network? Because one thing that we think about in game funds is everyone and their mother now wants to become a game fund, even though they don't all offer real strategic value. And so now it's not enough to be a fund with $40 million, $100 million. Doesn't matter. It's now not enough to be just a fund. I believe in the next 10 years, most funds that are just a fund will cease to exist, because now capital is very democratic in how you can actually invest. Investing has become much easier to do in the past 10, 20 years. So, with respect to that, I do think you have an edge. Um, how do you feel like you're providing strategic value around existing and onboarding Congregate accounts that have sort of played games for many years?
Yeah. So we tried this actually when I mentioned earlier 2019, where we had a bit the proof of technology phase for us with Forte, another blockchain company, where we were testing in the congregate.com ecosystem the implementation of, let's say, early NFTs, which was stickers and blocks, basically, right? You couldn't really sell them on OpenSea. Everything is a closed platform. But we wanted to see if the tech works and if users are kind of accepting the opportunity to use them, to trade them with each other. And that actually was a great success. We created over 3 million wallets around that specific tech trial, let's call it that way. And I would say the activity rate of that is still very high, in the 10 to 20% on a daily base, right? So we see a certain interest on the site. Not everybody likes that. For us, it's an offer. I'm not passionate about convincing people. I'm offering opportunities while I'm not killing the existing. This is a bit my path, my credo. So we certainly want to move forward and offer people the opportunity to own something, because I really think this is the key element of blockchain. We've had an internet for the past 25 years where you could not legally own anything with regards to what you were purchasing in a game. Now you have that, or not even a game, also other components, right? So this is certainly huge. This is when it hit me personally. I said, wow, this is kind of game changing. This is huge. And it has become a bit, I would say, popular to trash against it or to be on the other side. And that's fine. We don't want to convince anyone. It is an offer. As I said, I'm not passionate about claiming that I know what's right or wrong. It's an offer.
Well, I think if you just, I've been someone who believes, and this is Web 2, Web 3, Web 6. I don't care, because ultimately I just care about gaming, and if Web 3 improves that, great. If not, then I'll be happy in Web 2 or Web 4. I've been under the belief that, and I believe a number of other studios have also taken this position, and some have not, which is I believe the market will decide what is right and what is wrong.
Exactly.
And the only thing that matters in this business, in the entertainment business specifically, not in like pharmacy and things that actually need extensive testing, is that the market will decide what is appetizing. The market will decide what it's willing to pay for and what it's willing to not pay for. And at the end of the day, if that means it's not Web3 gaming or NFTs, then so be it. If it's
Yeah.
if it's Grand Theft Auto 5 without ownership, then so be it. But I think, and I said this in the beginning of our talk here, that there's a reason there's a lot of money coming to this space. It's not just because all these funds had no access to other Web2 game deals to invest in, and now they have to deploy capital. It's not true. I've looked at all the other funds. I know who all the other funds are. I've talked to them. They have made deals in Web2 or Web3. They don't care. It has to do with the
Yeah.
fact that
And
you look. Oh, Marcus, yeah, I would love for you to chime in.
no, I just wanted to say I see a lot of similarities to the free to play era, when this was
Yeah,
coming up.
100%.
And I'm always looking at a quote from Schopenhauer, a kind of German philosopher. He had the three stages of truth. And he said, first, everything is kind of ridicule. Then it is violently opposed. And then it is accepted as being self evident. And we saw that in the free to play era. And I see a lot of similarities with the blockchain. We are early, right? So we are not in a rush. We want to make sure we are betting on the right projects, that we are bringing that into the right context, and helping users also with wallet creation, the tech around setting this up. It's a nightmare for the grandma in Nebraska, but I want her as well to be able to do it. So this is another component where we are looking for support and actually seeing and identifying for ourselves an education role in helping our users to get through that kind of fog in the dark, right?
Well, I'd say most German philosophers are not that optimistic. but
like
but
like German CFOs.
maybe German CFOs. I don't know most CFOs that are optimistic, but that's okay. That's not their job to
Exactly.
be. It's their job to make people have a sense of reality and truth. But
Yeah.
all right. So the method to my madness. This is why it all made sense, and I didn't want to just talk about Kongregate and talk about the larger market. Uh, User acquisition was the main topic here. Why? Because I think that your platform does that. Because Apple's new standardization, and by the way, Apple is now going to do their own ad thing, and that's a whole other thing we could talk about, just to replace Facebook ads, which is not that any different. But um, user acquisition strategy, having a fund is user acquisition strategy, and the reason I think Web3 gaming is probably going to be here, regardless of what players think today, is that all games that are financed, that are funded by funds or publishers or banks, they demand a user acquisition strategy without advertising, without Apple, who owns a majority of the Western Hemisphere, allowing the access to that unless you go through their gates. It is forcing the game industry to look for new acquisition strategies. Web3 happens to be one. And my belief is that ownership is in itself a user acquisition strategy, because what better customer to have than someone who has a stake in the very thing that's being created together. And I think that's where a lot of
Yeah.
people are placing that bet. And with that being said, I want to go into the two games you're testing that with. Well, one is a game, and one I think is a game, but looks more like a general experiment. So, um, start with Bitverse, which is something I understand more, and then Blood Vessels, which seems to be a general experience.
Yeah, exactly. We already have a game called Bit Heroes, which is currently moving into a rename phase of Bit Heroes Quest, which is an 8-bit dungeon crawling RPG game, right? You can play it on mobile web, also on Steam. And the idea of using this game and creating a bit of a, let's say, Bitverse, a kind of metaverse of games, of different games that appear in this Bit Heroes environment, was a key idea of the team to kind of test the Web3 space. We have started to build a battle royale game already, which will come out in Q4. We are also revealing a runner game later this year. So we will actually, you will see the NFT drop around September. And then you have actually 3 games ready to play until the end of the year. So it was very important for us to kind of, get the word out, but also get the game out, which is a strong
So
argument.
I played a little bit of the first game on your site. I
Mm.
my testing for the spaces last time is I played it, and it was I wouldn't call it RTS. It was a turn-based action game, right? You're press X to hit the person and build up your character. How are you building these? I'm curious about the battle royale part, because that seems more intensive in terms of a web-based environment. Can you
Yeah.
detail how you're building a battle royale in a web portal through your site?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix between Surviv.io, another game that we own, and Bit Heroes, kind of pairing both strength of in each individual game into or with each other, right? And you will have with NFTs, avatars, basically that you can choose, upgrade with a certain underlying token economy and whatsoever, or just by achievements. We strongly believe in the play and earn element. You can actually progress and upgrade and take this character from game to game, or these characters from game to game, and use them in a more global sense, right? So we really wanted to combine a couple of elements and game genres. We are looking into a total of probably up to 9 games with a different style. Could move into a CCG or even land related game. So there are quite some opportunities, and players like that. You know, we tested it in the community, and of course, you always have some who are doubtful. But even I remember when the team came back to me and said we had a couple of folks in the community that really said, you know, guys, we still don't like crypto, but what you are doing here is pretty cool. It's actually allowing us to stay in the space while, you know, you might want to look over your shoulder to upgrade a bit, to experiment in a way. So we are not killing anything. We are rather extending it, which is a great idea behind. And we even might bring back the kings themselves, the Jupitermans guys. They are very heavily interested in the crypto space and potentially doing a one game with us together. So quite some good news. Let's see how that goes.
So let me ask you a CFO question, because I don't get too many CFOs that want to talk on Spaces or even on the phone. The tokenomics. That's the big question mark for pretty much all these games. It seems to be that Web2 will say NFTs are worthless because who cares about owning things, or you don't truly own it. Right. Some of those are actually valid concerns, but the other side, which quite frankly they've been right most of the time, and I don't even debate it, because like I agree to the most part, is most of the tokenomics in play to earn, and I feel like play and earn is somewhat similar. The tokenomics are what you would more so call a play to zero. What I've found through just looking at every game is, from what I've seen, and you can tell me otherwise because I don't have an accounting or finance background, is that the problem therein lies directly in building a token for a game itself. And I've advocated myself around the idea of having token ecosystems, like Immutable makes sense, or like a Solana token ecosystem makes sense, but having tokens for specific
Yeah.
games, I find, can be quite the issue. Is this going to be a Kongregate coin, or is this a coin for the game? And based on either or, what's your thought
Yeah.
process and reasoning behind it?
I start with a second question, Jonah. You know, the general problem is the differentiation between a utility and a security these days, right? Specifically when you look into tokens. So you want to make sure you're not killing anything or excluding a part of the players just because the SEC has certain regulations and you are not able to do what you want. Let's put it that way, which has a certain reason, right? That being said, we always had in-game currencies. We always had platform currencies. So coming from that angle, we already started building utilities back in the past by just using these elements. So the question for Web3 is not necessarily, do I need to find my game or platform token on Coinbase? It's rather the question, how can I enrich the existing ecosystem with a kind of in-game or in-platform currency that is then simply tokenized, right? And that will be a bit the path that we are pursuing without, revealing too much, because we still have Q4 coming. But I'm looking into games like Upland. They have a terrific token system that is also not really tradable in a stock exchange or crypto exchange that way, right? You actually get rewarded. You can use your rewards in fueling up a car that might have been an NFT that you purchased. So this is a bit, I would say, from the CFO, but also from the CEO, a bit of a more healthy way to start a conversation with a player, right? Because it has very strong fundamentals of the key idea behind free to play and Web2, with the tokenization and digitalization, so to speak, of a token that can even do more. You could technically, you know, gain ownership in projects with staking tokens. So I'm interested in these elements, potentially even creating DAOs. I think I'm not here, for the kind of fast money. I really want to make sure we are building something that has a new path that we can understand and leverage.
You opened up a Pandora's box that I'm not sure you want to open up, but we're now we have to go there before we go to blood vessels. But we will get to blood vessels, and that is you said you said the words that people at Hogwarts are not allowed to say, and that is DAOs, gaming DAOs. So it's an interesting thing you bring up because Kongregate is I don't it's not a public company, right? I'm pretty sure it's not,
Yeah,
right?
it's held by a public company
Right,
that
got it.
makes it a
It's still held.
semi-public company.
It's
Yeah,
still held by MTG, correct?
exactly.
Yeah, okay, got it. I wasn't sure if it was its own private entity, like divested from MTG, or
No,
if
no.
they still owned it. Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure on that. So that's interesting. You're a company operating as a subsidiary under a publicly traded company, which it's pretty highly traded, in Europe. It's not a small cap company. It's a legit company. Um, and so my thought process is how do you build DAOs? Because from the study that we do a lot of research on DAOs and where it makes sense, and we've even looked at doing it for ourselves. And essentially, what you'd be creating is a sub DAO, which is essentially like if Congress had a subcommittee for a specific task, right? More so
Yeah,
than Congress itself, because if it was Congress itself, then they would own a part of MTG or a part of Congress, and that's the only way to do that is to go buy the shares.
yeah.
So how do you think about sub DAOs within the larger Congregate and the even larger MTG ecosystem? Like, what are the rights potentially warranted? And I know you're not a lawyer, so I'm just going to say that out loud before you even speak.
Yeah,
That
yeah, absolutely.
this is just like free thinking. This is not like you're guaranteed to do this. But how are you thinking about rights warranted to players who are operating in the Congregate potential DAO ecosystem?
Yeah, it's still something we have to figure out, to be very honest with you. My point was rather to, kind of be open to anything like that, to understand how can we allow, let's say, players to be part of the ecosystem in a way that you can create something, that you create, to use again Upland's comparison, to create, they have neighborhoods where guys create content, which is then kind of a sub DAO like you described. So how can we potentially go into a similar direction of engaging interested people who want to actually be part of something bigger? Is there a path for us? That might not happen tomorrow. We need to kickstart the ecosystem first. We need to, make sure everything is working and the path is clear also for new players to join, to really do the education piece first. But in the long run, that was rather my point. That could be a very interesting opportunity to actually think about, you can vote about the next game coming out. You can vote about something of the content that is produced. It's even something we might need to wait for the SEC to get a clearer picture around these kind of things,
It's
right?
funny you say that
Still,
because we've looked at DAO filings like Wyoming filings, Vermont
yeah,
filings, and essentially they're not DAOs. They're called DAO LLCs, which they're just
exactly.
LLCs with more like opinions. It's like it's
Yeah,
basically a DAO LLC is best as I can describe is a dysfunctional LLC, but like pretending to not be an LLC.
yeah, exactly. It's something
I
that
don't.
still
Yeah,
needs a
I'm
bit
sure in
clarity.
Europe. Honestly, this is where I think Europe and other emerging locations are going to have better laws that make more sense. And because like DAOs are actually seem something to be more like Europe friendly, South America friendly. and not so much America friendly, which I hope I'm wrong, because being an American citizen, I would like to see some like proper regulation there. But let's move on to the next part, because I have like a hard stop at like 6:10, because I'm not speaking from my office. I'm in Europe. I'm currently in.
Yeah.
Uh, People would be shocked. It's the one place no one visits in Europe. But I have a reason to be here for a day. I'm in Bratislava, Slovakia,
Wow.
and then tomorrow I'll be in London. But I'm taking a Euro business trip, as they say, and interesting time to be alive. I just wish I wasn't traveling out of the country while Nancy Pelosi takes her vacation
Oh yeah,
in
in
Taiwan.
Taiwan, that
But
might be a dangerous coincidence.
that's a whole other topic that's not gaming related. But it I don't know why it's been on my mind. Blood vessels. I looked at the title, and it seems to be very different than sort of what you create at Congregate.
Yeah.
It's more experimental. Can you talk about what it is, and why you built it, and where your thoughts are around it?
Absolutely. Yeah, so Blood Vessels is a narrative role play game, a tabletop RPG that is inspired by basically the classic vampire theme. Um, we started, or a couple of employees started actually in the pandemic to create this as a, let's say, cause of communication. People worked remote, distant from each other, and they played tabletop games again. So this idea came up, and we kind of, created a very small, tiny plant on the side that we wanted to understand, that we wanted to use for really getting a better idea of the space as well. Are we able to create interest in the market from growing that from zero? And as you said, it's a, let's say, untypical congregate related game, but with the passion of the team and the idea behind the learning phase, it was quite a huge opportunity for us. The game itself will launch later in the year. The setting is in Chicago around the 1900s, Great Fires, and it's a collaborative storytelling experience where you can use NFTs to, let's say, progress a bit like the Dungeons and Dragons from the basic idea, right? So you have characters that allow you to progress in a certain way, and it's quite very interesting what the team developed here with regards to a complete new fresh appeal, right? We actually move out of our comfort zone, as you say, but that's the kind of fresh air I also like and appreciate, to be honest.
So I'm going to use, it's not really a finance term, it's a VC term, but I feel like it will speak your language, because I appreciate your language, the language of a CFO and a CEO. It's a three-letter acronym, and that's called KPI, Key
Mm-hmm.
Performance Indicators. Now, I'm just explaining this to the audience. I know you know this, so it's not like I need to teach you. You're way beyond this. You're like Harvard level on this stuff. So, for people who don't know, KPIs stand for Key Performance Indicators. When you create a game, or when you create any entertainment product, or you create any company, the first thing a VC or any financier or banker is gonna ask you is, what are your KPIs? What are the indicators for what you deem proper growth or success in your company or your IP or your game? So that's what KPI means in a very basic sense. There's a whole other list of other metrics that matter, but not really. And ultimately, just like sidestep, it's just a great game of, I call it language chess for people to justify their value when you're actually creating the product. So, Marcus, I'm going to be that guy with these two titles that you're working on, and one being very different. What are your KPIs for this? Like, what do you consider a success or an indicator for success around blood vessels, and for this Bitverse that you're building?
Yeah, so it's easier to answer for the Bitverse for sure, because there we have an existing game, we have existing metrics, we have millions of players that joined since the game was basically out and going live. For us, it is certainly important to grow the community to a certain amount. We are not really sharing these numbers, but I can just kind of rephrase this a little bit here. And I want to make sure with the opportunity to play, we will, as it is also free to play, we will have the regular monetization in the game. We will have in-app purchases. We will have some advertising revenues on the side. So these metrics will, of course, be important. It will be interesting to see how we grow the community, and our opportunity to, let's call it, acquire or gain new players will be very important. And of course, we want to make sure with the NFT sales that there is something for everyone, right? This should not be a kind of extremely high-priced experience. It's kind of across the bench to allow really players of every kind of background, so to speak, to join if they like, and get an NFT that they can take from game to game. So with the NFT sales and the monetization KPIs in the game, we have actually a very solid benchmark compared to what we see currently in the market and what we know from the existing game, right? So this might be a bit easier. With blood vessels, I honestly want to really make sure this is staying a protected plant. It might even be far too early to expect a tremendous success within the next 3 months. I think storytelling games and the whole storytelling approach will be something that enters this space in 1 to 2 years from now, and we will see more of these kind of things like we saw with storytelling mobile games, right? They actually entered a bit later, and was great approach, great opportunity to bring diversity into something. So I always want to make sure our focus is more on the existing things, protecting the new things, not over demanding anything there, and learning a lot, right? Learning how that these things we did to build the community worked well while the others didn't. So that is a bit, I think, the benefit on the blood vessel side. It will launch this year. We will have NFTs. We have grown already the community to a, let's say, sizable amount. So it will be interesting to see how the gameplay works and how the acceptance is, of course.
Yeah, well, I think you have that. You have that leg room, right? Everything's factored into. I think every business, not every business can, not every business should, um, go by the exact Excel sheet that someone like you provides. There has to be room for
Exactly.
experimental expenses, and I think that's interesting, by the way, with your position, because you kind of play left and right brain, because you have to have the discipline of a CFO, but you need to have the daring gall of a CEO to try things that a CFO would deem to be very, very risky, going into the next quarter and reporting.
Yeah.
I will ask this, and by the way, if people do want to come up for questions, now would be your time to do so, because I want to cut this off at 6:10. How do you, as a person in both chairs, right, the captain's chair and the co-captain's chair,
Mm-hmm.
how do you battle your left and right brain? Like when you're looking at a potential strategy and you're looking at a game that you want to develop, how is CFO brain and CEO brain working together to create a determination?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and sometimes not so easy. I think the hassle is a bit around weighing in on projects and successes and really letting the numbers speak on the one side, weighing against the opportunity on the other, right? I want to make sure we are combining opportunistic approaches, because in the whole group, we are probably the incubation piece at the moment, right? The others more have a traditional setting with their games and their genres, while we have a bit the, let's call it, freedom and opportunity to test things out, to pursue new opportunities and new ways. But this has always a price, right? You have to have a strategy, you have to deliver on a strategy. And for us, it was really the, let's call it, rebirth of Kongregate.com in a web3 environment, driven by add-ons around NFTs, blockchain components. And in 1 or 2 years from now, I'm pretty sure that you will see more and more IP holders moving into the space. And we've already been contacted and are in current discussion around these projects, right? So it's a bit the long run that I'm also seeing. Where is this going? Where is this trending in a 2025 horizon, for example? So I'm really thinking not of, let's say, this year or next year. I'm rather already in 2025 with my personal or company related goal, right? That is a bit the setup and the mix I'm trying to combine.
Yeah, you're playing tightrope in your
Yeah.
brain, and it's an interesting balancing act because you got your CFO brain, your CEO brain, and then most importantly your German philosopher brain. And
Exactly.
the the CEO says everything's going to be great. We're going to make a shit ton of money. The CFO brain says my CEO is a crazy son of a bitch, and we're going to lose a ton of money. And the German philosopher says we're all fucked and we're all going to die, and it doesn't matter anyway. So
Exactly. No, you nailed it. Yeah.
so that's how I want to end that because we have no questions. But I just want to thank you, Marcus, for your time and for rescheduling with us. I know we had some technical difficulties a few weeks ago, and I look forward to seeing the success of your fund and the games you're working on, and keep being daring and just keep providing value to the space. I think this crypto winter is a longer symptom of just our general economic issues, and I don't think it's reflective of where we're going as an industry. So I'm excited to see what you do.
Thanks a lot for having me, Jonah. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. All right, I have to do the lawyer thing. This room was not financial or legal advice. Anything I say or Marcus says can be used in the court of stupidity if you follow it. This room was not an ad. If it was, there would be a hashtag at the top because the FTC says so. With that being said, this is the Real Third Web Spaces. My name is Jonah Blake, CEO and founder of Real Third Web. If you liked what you heard, please go to my bio and join our Discord and follow Real Third Web. If you didn't, that's it. I have nothing else to say. If you didn't like it, it's what it is. So I normally have some music playing at the end, but since I'm in Bratislava, Slovakia, at the time of this recording, I'm going to leave you with unnerving silence. And we'll be back next week. We're booked with this podcast up until the end of September. So I think we actually have some stuff being booked in October. So we've been growing and we're not going anywhere. So that's it. Have an awesome day. Take care.